Chapter 40. Heart to Heart. Sierra's vantage point on the ridge had become her solitary sanctuary, a place where she could grieve, plan, and seek vengeance all at once. The weight of loss bore down on her with every passing day, and the pain of Katie's absence was a constant reminder of devastation she felt from Eckhard and his father. In the distance, the sounds of battle raged on, a continuous rumbling of conflict that Sierra had grown numb to. The war around her was no longer her primary concern. Her focus had shifted to a singular purpose: to make those responsible for her friends' deaths pay dearly. Days turned into nights, and Sierra remained vigilant, her senses honed to perfection. Chinese soldiers who ventured too close to her hiding spot met swift and merciless ends. She had become a ghostly specter, haunting the outskirts of the facility like a harbinger of death. Her gaze never wavered from the large facility leading underground, the very place that had taken so much from her. She watched and waited, her patience unwavering. It was only a matter of time before Eckhard would reveal himself, and she would be ready. Each day that passed stoked the fires of hatred. She meticulously plotted her revenge, knowing that vengeance was the only solace she could find in a world consumed by chaos and conflict. The faces of her fallen friends, Katie, Blankenship, and Carlos, haunted her thoughts, their memories driving her forward with an unquenchable thirst for retribution. Sierra's heart raced as she spotted Eckhard standing just inside the large door of the facility. The sight of the man responsible for so much pain and loss filled her with an overwhelming desire for revenge. She didn't hesitate, leaping from her concealed position beneath a pile of leaves and brush, ready to close the distance and end Eckhard's life. But a hand grabbed her shoulder and she spun around, her revolver drawn, ready to fire. To her astonishment, it was Robert who had stopped her. He held a finger to his lips, urging her to be silent. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" Sierra asked, her voice filled with surprise. "I'm the one who taught you how to stalk your prey, remember?" Robert whispered. "Now let's go before this place is destroyed." Before Sierra could respond, she spotted Angelique, who had appeared beside her brother. Angelique's words were filled with compassion. "We have air power now, and this facility is going to be hit hard soon," Angelique said. "We also have information on the mastermind behind this entire mess. Soon, they will pay for this. There's no need for you to sacrifice yourself for revenge." Sierra's grip on her revolver tightened, torn between her burning desire for vengeance and the words of her brother and Angelique. The war around them raged on, and the facility that held her tormentors stood as a looming target. "That can't happen! You have to call it off now!" Sierra insisted. Sierra's revelation hit Robert and Angelique like a thunderclap. Stunned by the information of an imminent airstrike on the facility, she urgently pleaded with them to call it off. Confusion filled the faces of her brother and Angelique as they exchanged bewildered glances. "Why?" they asked in unison. Sierra, her eyes filled with anguish, explained what she had witnessed. The hundreds of U.S. citizens held as prisoners within the facility, forced into labor by Chinese troops rushing to construct defenses. Angelique, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly reached for her radio. She contacted Colonel Freeman, her voice laced with the need for immediate action, and advised him to suspend the impending attack on the facility. Quickly, she informed Fremont of the high number of U.S. friendlies being held captive within its walls. Without more than Angelique's word, the airstrike was postponed for 24 hours to allow them time to formulate a plan for rescuing the innocent prisoners. Angelique and Robert understood that time was of the essence, and their priority had shifted from reconnaissance to rescuing the innocent prisoners held within the facility. Luckily, Sierra had been observing the facility for days, and Angelique sought her knowledge. "Where do they keep everyone at night?" Angelique asked urgently. But Sierra, her eyes fixed on Eckhard's image, stood unresponsive, her grip on her revolver tightening. She was consumed by thoughts of revenge. Robert stepped closer with a plea in his eyes. "Sis, look at me," he requested. "I know you want revenge, but we have to get those people out of there." "Where do they sleep?" he urged. Breaking away from her vengeful thoughts, Sierra reluctantly turned to her brother. She knew there was no chance of proceeding with her plan now. "There, that building to the left of the main entrance," she replied with a heavy heart. They heard them all inside just at dusk. With the information they needed, the three of them began formulating a daring rescue plan, determined to save the lives of their fellow Americans trapped within the facility's walls. As night fell, Sierra's restlessness grew. She understood the importance of waiting for Karnak and their own troops to launch a full-force attack, but the thought of Eckehard potentially escaping gnawed at her. She knew that time was of the essence. "When is that going to be? Eckehard could get away," Sierra frustratingly exclaimed. Angelique, however, maintained her composure and replied, "By my calculations, tomorrow morning. The A-10s are making short work of defenses, but it's still a hard fight to get here. They aren't giving up ground easily, knowing they're running out of it to give." With the plan in place and a formulated timeline, Angelique, Sierra, and Robert settled down for some much-needed rest, determined to be ready for the impending assault. However, as the others closed their eyes under the cover of brush and leaves, Sierra couldn't shake the burning desire for revenge from her mind. In the dead of night, Sierra silently ventured off alone, determined to track down Eckehard and make him pay for the pain and suffering he had caused. The darkness concealed her as she moved through the shadows, a lone figure with a singular purpose burning in her heart. Sierra's heart raced as she slipped through the unguarded entrance gate, her every movement planned. Her knowledge of the guards' routines, gained through days of meticulous observation, allowed her to exploit their vulnerabilities. As the gate guards engaged in conversation with the incoming vehicle's driver, Sierra seized her opportunity. She moved swiftly, avoiding any direct line of sight. Her senses were sharp, and she could almost feel the presence of her prey within the compound. Cautiously, Sierra continued her stealthy advance, navigating the compound's layout with precision. Finding refuge beneath another vehicle already inside the compound, Sierra concealed herself and patiently waited for the moment when the vehicle she had just observed entering would pass by her hiding spot. Timing her next action was pivotal to her survival as she rolled from under one, between the wheels of the other now pulling into the facility. Successfully avoiding the crushing power of the vehicle's massive tires was just the first step. She then scrambled to find somewhere to grab that wouldn't wrap her body up into a twisted pile of flesh around the drive shaft. Reflexively, Sierra clung to the rear axle of the vehicle with every ounce of strength she possessed, her heart pounding in her chest as dust swirled around her. The rear axle slipped from the grasp of one hand, and desperation fueled her efforts to hold on with the other. With sheer grit, she managed to hook the rear bumper with her boot, securing a lifeline pushing against the bumper and holding the rear axle with one hand. Reaching up with her free hand, fingers stretching toward the vehicle's frame, her last chance to maintain her precarious position. The harsh wind and blinding floodlights in the open area between the gate and the facility entrance threatened to expose her at any moment. Her body strained as she fought to maintain her grip, the weight of the situation pushing her to the limit. She knew that her life depended on staying hidden beneath the vehicle as it approached the facility entrance, where her nemesis, Eckehard, awaited. As Sierra clung beneath the truck, her hair brushing the cavern's smooth surface mere inches from her face, she scanned her surroundings for potential cover. Her heart pounded with adrenaline, and eyes burned from dust. She needed a plan, and quickly. Her keen eyes locked onto a cluster of crates, exactly what she required for cover once she released her grip on the truck's underbelly. Without hesitation, she let go and dropped to the ground, rolling as she made contact with the floor. In seconds, she had reached the stack of crates, her heart still racing as she considered her next move. With the agility of a predator, she navigated the cavern, skillfully using whatever available cover she could find. Her eyes remained fixed on her target, Eckehard, who stood across the expansive space. Sierra closed the distance rapidly until she was almost within striking distance. However, her progress was abruptly halted by a wall of 50 guards surrounding her, their presence forcing her to raise her pistol in defiance. Her finger tightened on the trigger, ready to take the shot that would finally end this nightmare. But her hopes were dashed as their presence blocking her line of fire. Frustration and anger surged within her, emotions that threatened to consume her. Sierra glared at Eckhard, her grip on the pistol unyielding. His smug demeanor grated on her nerves, but she couldn't let her emotions get the better of her. "I don't know whether I should be pleased or frightened, my dear," Eckhard taunted, his eyes locked onto hers even through the human barricade. Sierra could feel the intensity of their shared history, the emotions that still simmered beneath the surface. But she couldn't let herself be swayed by sentiment. "I don't care about your security," Sierra spat, her voice laced with defiance. "I came here for you, Eckhard. You can't hide forever." As the standoff continued, Sierra knew that she had to find a way to outmaneuver the guards and take her shot. Her voice reflected her anger as she aimed her pistol squarely at Eckhard through gaps between soldiers. As her finger tightened on the trigger, ready to unleash retribution, Sierra's focus wavered for an instant, her eyes locking onto fleeting glimpses of Eckhard's piercing blue eyes between the shifting soldiers who encircled her. In that moment, a complex mix of emotions swirled within her, an unexpected and undeniable longing. Eckhard, well aware of the turmoil in his own heart, could hear the echoes of his father's teachings resounding in his mind. The struggle to maintain control over his emotions intensified as he gazed upon Sierra, a potent reminder of the power she held over him. His voice, once filled with warmth, now turned cold and detached as he issued a chilling ultimatum. "Drop your pistol," he commanded, his voice unwavering. "Or they open fire. 3, 2... Sierra, her heart pounding with that of anger, frustration, and a lingering sense of desire, made the difficult decision to drop her weapon. She raised her empty hand above her head in a clear sign of surrender as soldiers closed in to secure her, their cold, unyielding grip a stark reminder of her predicament. Eckhard, his emotions carefully concealed behind a facade of authority, strode through the ranks of Chinese soldiers who obediently made way for him. He approached Sierra, his gaze unwavering as it met hers. In that intense moment, he realized that there was only one way to put an end to the tumultuous feelings he had for her, feelings that had threatened to undermine his carefully constructed world. "I've had enough," he declared, his voice commanding. "Bring out the other 2 prisoners. It's time to exterminate this rodent problem once and for all." Sierra's eyes widened with alarm as she watched guards drag Katie and Gabe from a locked room, their expressions revealing the disorientation of being thrust into the harsh light after being held in darkness. Anger surged within Sierra as she demanded answers from Eckhard. "What is this? What are you going to do to them?" Sierra's voice trembled with concern. Eckhard remained silent, his eyes fixed on the trio of prisoners. He gave a subtle signal to the soldiers, and they led Sierra, Katie, and Gabe out of the facility. Once they were outside, Eckhard had them lined up in front of a large fortified wall, his voice carrying an air of authority as he made his intentions known. "Now, we will end this here and now," Eckhard declared, his words an attempt to convince himself that he could carry out the execution. Sierra, however, responded with an unsettling smile, her expression unsettling Eckhard and causing him to momentarily lose his composure. "I demanded to know how in the face of extinction. What is your amusement?" With a grin that held a touch of madness, Sierra's voice rang out, carrying an eerie confidence. "Your father, soon, he will be nothing but ash, and there's nothing you can do about it." Chaos around Sierra, Kate, and Gabe reached a fever pitch when, out of nowhere, a massive Chinese combat vehicle roared onto the scene. With merciless momentum, it plowed through a group of Chinese soldiers, sending bodies flying and crushing them under its wheels. Pandemonium reigned as soldiers scrambled for cover, some futilely firing upon the unstoppable vehicle. As the armored behemoth came to a thunderous halt near Sierra, Kate, and Gabe, they seized the opportunity to free themselves from their restraints. With haste, they jumped inside the vehicle. Without hesitation, the vehicle accelerated towards the facility's gate, leaving turmoil and confusion in its wake. "What the hell is that smell?" Kate exclaimed, her voice tinged with disgust. Darian, who had been waiting patiently inside the vehicle for 3 grueling days, responded matter-of-factly. "What do you think? I was in here for 3 days. You said stay, so I stayed. You want me to let you out?" Kate's immediate answer was a resounding no. Despite the terrible stench, they had no time to linger. Bullets continued to shatter the armored glass as they raced toward the facility's gate. In the side mirror, Sierra caught a glimpse of Eckehard, standing among the mangled and broken bodies, his gaze locked onto her. Sierra's heart pounded, torn between conflicting emotions. The instinct to flee was powerful, but something within her screamed to turn back. "Stop!" Sierra commanded, causing Darian to hit the brakes, and before the vehicle came to a complete stop, she leaped out of the passenger door. She moved swiftly toward the gate guard, who was in the process of reloading his weapon. In one fluid motion, she drew Chain's dagger from her boot, thrusting it into the guard's chest, piercing his heart. The guard stiffened momentarily, his eyes filled with shock and pain, before collapsing to the ground. Gunfire erupted from the road ahead, taking out other Chinese soldiers who manned the guard post. Sierra found herself standing in the midst of a chaotic battleground. In the chaos, she could hear Roberts and Karnick's voices, calling out commands to others as they advanced on the facility. But Sierra's mission was far from complete. She continued to walk with purpose, closing the distance between herself and Eckehard once more. As Sierra closed the distance between herself and Eckehard, an epic battle of emotions raged within her. The anger that had fueled her desire for revenge now gave way to a conflicting sense of want, and it infuriated her to her core. Stopping just a few feet in front of him, Sierra locked her gaze with his and brought the dagger to his throat, the sharp edge pressing gently against his skin. Eckehard made no attempt to resist. Instead, he pleaded with her. "Sierra, I've always been honest with you, my dear. We can take control from my father, but he mustn't die." Sierra held her ground, her voice demanding answers. "Why are you doing this?" With a hint of desperation in his eyes, Eckehard continued. "None of this was my choice. I was raised to be this, but you—" Sierra cut him off, her voice trembling with a mix of emotions. "No, don't." But it was too late. Eckehard, unable to resist the overwhelming pull he felt, pushed gently against the dagger and met her lips with his. Sierra's heart pounded in her chest as she felt his warmth, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. Even as the blade cut his skin, Eckehard held to his kiss, willing to risk his life for this stolen moment with Sierra. But eventually she pulled back, her back turned to him. Her emotions were in turmoil, and she desperately tried to regain control over herself. "Sierra, I never wanted this," Eckehard pleaded, desperation lacing his words. "And if what you say is true, that they are going to kill my father, we must get to him before they do." Sierra spun around to face him, her eyes filled with doubt and mistrust. "Look around. Why would I ever believe anything you say? It's probably just another lie to save him." As she glanced around, her eyes fell upon her true love, her .357 Magnum lying nearby. Instinctively, she dove for it, her fingers curling around the grip as she rolled onto her feet. The gun was now pointed just inches from Eckehard's face. Fearlessly, with a deep passion in his voice, Eckehard tried to explain. "My father has a backup plan. He used a variation of the Stuxnet computer worm to gain control of the world's nuclear arsenal. He intends to set off all the nuclear warheads worldwide if this mission failed. That's why he chose this underground network and the location for the Eagle's Nest, in the Rocky Mountains. He sees them coming, and he will end the world, have his revenge at the cost of everyone." Sierra's eyes widened with the severity of the revelation. The weight of the situation bore down upon her, and she realized the true extent of the danger they faced. "Sierra!" Robert's voice echoed in the cavernous space as he, Angelique, and others closed in on her. Sierra's mind raced as she absorbed Eckehard's confession. She couldn't bear the thought of losing anyone else she loved. "You have to stop him," she pleaded with Eckehard, her eyes locked onto his. Slowly, she lowered her pistol, and Robert's frantic calls grew louder as he approached. "How do we get to him in time?" Sierra asked as she holstered her revolver. Eckhard took her hand and led her toward the sleek black limousine. "With this, we can be there in 7 hours." Robert's voice grew desperate as he watched Sierra willingly follow the man he had once rescued her from back into the facility. As Angelique and Karnak arrived, their confusion evident. "What the hell is going on?" Angelique demanded. "That girl has always been a wild card," Karnak replied, placing a comforting hand on Robert's shoulder. "I'm sure she has a reason. Trust her, Robert."